What if the person you trusted most was secretly weaving a web of betrayal right before your eyes? It all began with an innocent question, a playful suggestion, but soon spiraled into something far darker, a calculated plan involving close friends, subtle manipulation, and a devastating revelation that shattered everything I thought I knew. As my world crumbled, I faced a choice. Let the pain define me, or fight to reclaim my life. This is the story of how trust was broken, lives were forever changed, and how, through the wreckage, I discovered strength I never knew I had. It all started as a casual evening. Pizza boxes strewn across the table, a random TV show playing in the background. My wife, laughing a bit too hard at nothing in particular, suggested a harmless game. Rate her friends? Sure, it sounded silly, like something we'd laugh about and forget the next day. But the way her eyes lingered on me after she said it, something was off. I brushed it aside, chalking it up to her quirky sense of humor. Yet, as she handed me her phone with a picture of Lily front and center, the room felt colder. Her voice was light, teasing. "So, what do you think?" But her gaze held something else, something sharp. I hesitated. What was this? A trap? A test? My mind scrambled for the right answer, though none felt safe. Her insistence to just be honest didn't help. Suddenly, the game didn't feel so harmless. I laughed it off, trying to steer us back to safer ground. "She's pretty. But isn't this a little weird?" I said, aiming for playful. My wife just smiled, too calm, too calculated. That moment planted a seed of doubt. Was this about Lily, or something deeper? My unease grew, but I told myself I was overthinking. Later that night, lying awake, her words echoed in my head. The way she had pushed the game felt deliberate, like a chess move in some strategy I couldn't understand yet. Something was brewing, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been pulled into a game I didn't sign up for. The next time it happened, we were in the middle of dinner, pasta simmering on the stove, her glass of wine half empty. She brought up Lily again, casually at first, mentioning her new haircut. Then, almost out of nowhere, she dropped the question, "Would you sleep with her?" The words hit like a jolt of electricity. I stared at her, fork halfway to my mouth, trying to process if I'd heard correctly. She laughed like it was just another joke, but her eyes didn't match the tone. "Relax," she said, waving me off. "It's just hypothetical." But something about her demeanor didn't sit right. Hypothetical, maybe, but why bring it up at all? I tried to shrug it off, but the question burrowed into my thoughts, making dinner feel like a performance I hadn't rehearsed for. Later, she circled back, teasing me about how flustered I'd been. "It's just a question," she insisted, but her words felt rehearsed, deliberate. I caught myself wondering, was she testing me, setting me up for something? Her persistent tone wasn't playful. It carried a strange undercurrent I couldn't name. By the time we cleaned up the kitchen, I was rattled. Questions swirled in my head, each one heavier than the last. Was I overreacting? Was this really just an innocent joke? Yet, the way her laughter lingered, too light, too deliberate, hinted at something more. I didn't have answers, only more unease. The question didn't fade. It lingered like an itch I couldn't scratch. Days passed, but her words kept replaying in my mind. She brought up Lily again, this time slipping her name into casual conversations. Lily said this, or Lily thought that. I started to notice the pattern. Every mention carried a subtle emphasis, like she was planting ideas without making it obvious. I found myself analyzing every interaction. Was I imagining things, or had she mentioned Lily more in the past week than she had in the last year? It wasn't just the frequency, it was the way she said it. Her tone was breezy, but there was an edge, a precision that didn't belong in idle chatter. I couldn't shake the feeling she was building up to something. When I confronted her, lightly testing the waters, she laughed it off. "You're being paranoid," she said with a dismissive wave. But her smile didn't reach her eyes. That's when I knew it wasn't just in my head. She was deflecting, trying to keep me off balance. Her nonchalance only deepened my suspicion. It's strange how doubt works. Once it takes root, it grows in the smallest cracks. Every glance, every offhand comment became a puzzle piece. The more I tried to make sense of it, the less the picture made sense. I didn't know what game she was playing, but I was sure of one thing. This wasn't just about Lily anymore. The first time we hung out as a group, it was supposed to be easy. Dinner at our favorite restaurant, good food, better company. But from the moment Lily walked in, something shifted. She greeted us with her usual charm, her laughter spilling over the table like a warm tide. Still, there was an edge to her tonight, a boldness that felt deliberate. As the evening unfolded, Lily's comments grew bolder. A compliment here, a lingering glance there. "You're so lucky," she said, eyes flicking toward me. "He's a catch." My wife smiled, her face unreadable, but I noticed her hand tighten around her glass. The tension was subtle, like a storm brewing just beneath the surface. The outings didn't stop there. In fact, they became more frequent. Dinners, game nights, even weekend hikes. Each time, Lily pushed the boundaries just a little further. A touch on the arm, a laugh at every joke. And my wife, she seemed unbothered. Almost like she was enjoying the show. I couldn't make sense of it. Was I imagining things? Or was there an unspoken game being played, one I wasn't privy to? By the end of the latest dinner, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Lily wasn't just a friend, she was part of something bigger. And the way my wife seemed to encourage her, it sent my mind spinning. Was this orchestrated, or worse, something they both wanted? Questions piled up, unanswered, leaving me more uncertain than ever. The hints became impossible to ignore. My wife's casual remarks about spicing things up were now routine, woven into conversations like an inside joke I wasn't part of. But when she started mentioning Lily in the same breath, my stomach twisted. "Maybe we could learn a thing or two from her," she'd say, her tone dripping with suggestion. The room always felt smaller when she said it. Her persistence wasn't subtle anymore. Every conversation seemed to circle back to the same theme. She framed it as a way to strengthen our connection, but her eyes said something else, like she was daring me to agree. The more she pushed, the more I felt trapped in a game I didn't sign up for. Was she testing me, manipulating me? I couldn't tell anymore. I started noticing other things, like how her phone calls with Lily became longer and more frequent. Once, I overheard laughter, too loud and too intimate for comfort. When I asked about it, she dismissed me with a wave of her hand. "You're reading too much into this," she said, but her tone felt more like a challenge than reassurance. The worst part? I caught myself questioning everything. Her motives, my sanity, even the foundation of our marriage. The idea that this was calculated, that she was steering us towards something twisted, made me feel powerless. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. The real storm was still coming. When she suggested the beach resort, it felt like a lifeline. Or so I thought. A chance to escape, to find some clarity in the waves and sunsets. "We need this," she said, her voice soft but insistent. I wanted to believe her. Maybe we could leave the tension behind, start fresh, but something about the way she smiled, almost triumphant, made me hesitate. The trip started well enough. The resort was beautiful, a postcard come to life. But the air between us still felt heavy, like we were dancing around something unspoken. Then came the surprise. Lily and Joshua had spontaneously booked the same weekend. My wife acted thrilled, like it was a happy accident, but my gut screamed otherwise. This wasn't a coincidence. Dinners turned into group outings. Drinks by the pool became late-night chats on the terrace. I felt outnumbered, the lines between friend and intruder blurring. My wife and Lily were inseparable, whispering and laughing like schoolgirls. Joshua, oblivious or complicit, stuck by my side, making polite conversation while my mind raced. Every glance, every comment seemed layered with subtext I couldn't decipher. By the third night, my unease had turned into full-blown dread. I watched my wife, her attention fixed on Lily and Joshua, her laughter too loud to be genuine. Whatever she had planned, I could feel it looming. The pieces were falling into place, and I was terrified of what they would reveal. I had been restless the entire evening, unable to shake the gnawing sense that something was about to happen. My wife had been unusually quiet at dinner, exchanging glances with Lily that made my skin crawl. I excused myself early, retreating to the quiet of our room, hoping space would bring some clarity. But clarity was the last thing I found. The moment I opened the door to the balcony, I froze. Laughter drifted up from below, light and intimate. My chest tightened as I leaned over the railing, my heart sinking at what I saw. There they were, my wife and Joshua, closer than they had any right to be, her hand on his arm, his whisper in her ear. It wasn't innocent. It couldn't be. I don't remember walking downstairs, but suddenly I was there, standing in the shadows, watching them. The way she looked at him, the way he touched her, it felt like a dagger to my chest. My instinct was to confront them, to shout, to demand answers, but instead, I stood frozen, betrayal crashing over me in waves. When she finally looked up and saw me, her expression wasn't one of guilt or surprise. It was something worse, calm, almost like she'd been expecting me. That look told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. And in that moment, any hope I had for us shattered. The confrontation wasn't as explosive as I imagined. No shouting, no dramatic gestures, just the unbearable weight of truth. "So this is what it's come to," I said, my voice quieter than I expected. She didn't flinch, didn't even try to deny it. Her calmness was chilling, like she had rehearsed for this moment. Joshua stood there, awkward and silent, a man suddenly realizing the depth of the mess he was in. Lily appeared moments later, wide-eyed but saying nothing, her presence a glaring reminder of how tangled this web had become. My wife finally spoke, but her words were hollow, rehearsed. "You're overreacting," she said, her tone dismissive, as if catching her wasn't enough proof. I laid it all out, her manipulation, the breadcrumbs she'd been leaving for weeks. The tension in the room was suffocating. "You planned this," I said, and the flicker of recognition in her eyes told me I was right. That was all I needed to hear. Whatever this was, an experiment, a game, it was over. I was done being a pawn. Walking away wasn't easy. The betrayal cut deep, and the weight of what I had lost, trust, love, stability, was crushing. But staying wasn't an option. As I closed the door on that night, I knew I wasn't just leaving her. I was leaving the person I used to be, the person who ignored the red flags until it was too late. The days that followed felt like walking through a fog, disorienting and heavy. Everything reminded me of what had happened. The empty side of the bed, the silence where laughter used to be. I won't lie, it broke me in ways I didn't know were possible. But as the weeks turned into months, something surprising began to happen. I started to rebuild. Therapy became a lifeline, a place to unravel the chaos in my mind. At first, it felt impossible to even speak the words aloud, to admit the depth of the betrayal. But with each session, I found a little more clarity. My therapist helped me see patterns I'd been blind to, ways I had ignored warning signs and let my boundaries erode. Eventually, I started focusing on myself again. I picked up old hobbies I had forgotten about, reconnected with friends who had drifted away. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living for me, not for someone else's expectations. The pain was still there, but it no longer defined me. Each small step forward felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Looking back, I realized that the betrayal wasn't the end of my story. It was a catalyst. It forced me to confront truths I had avoided and to rediscover my own strength. I wasn't the same person anymore, and maybe, just maybe, that was a good thing. As I pieced my life back together, I couldn't help but notice the ripple effects of her choices. My wife's carefully crafted image began to crack under the weight of whispers and speculation. Friends who once idolized her charm started keeping their distance. Social gatherings felt colder, and her sparkling reputation was dulled by the truth she couldn't hide forever. Financially, the separation took its toll on both of us. Splitting assets and untangling years of shared responsibilities was messy, but necessary. I walked away with less than I started, but I gained something far more valuable: freedom. Meanwhile, she was left to face the fallout of her decisions, including the loss of trust from those who once stood by her. Even Lily and Joshua weren't unscathed. Whatever camaraderie they thought they had built evaporated in the harsh light of reality. Their involvement carried its own set of consequences: strained relationships, awkward silences, and the weight of complicity. It was a chain reaction, each link breaking under the strain of the betrayal. And me, I found myself in a place I never expected: stronger. The scars were still there, a reminder of what I endured, but they no longer defined me. I had rebuilt piece by piece, and in doing so, I discovered a resilience I didn't know I had. In the end, we all faced the consequences, but I was the one who walked away better for it.
Keep watching our stories by clicking on one of the videos that appear on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be alerted about new videos. See you next time.